Every day we wake up to news that reminds us of how fragile life truly is. Today, the world lost four remarkable American legends. People who inspired us, entertained us, and shaped our culture in ways we'll never forget. Their stories remind us that greatness isn't about how long we live. It's about the mark we leave behind. It was quiet news that rippled loudly through the world of music. Anthony Jackson, one of the most innovative bass players of all time, passed away on October 19, 2025, at the age of 73. For many, his name was a whisper behind legendary songs. But for musicians, his touch was unforgettable, a sound that shaped the heartbeat of modern music. Born in New York City in 1952, Anthony grew up surrounded by sound. From a young age, he was drawn to the bass, not for fame, but for what it made him feel. He believed rhythm could speak truth, and through that belief, he changed the instrument forever. He didn't just play bass, he redefined it. In the early 1970s, Anthony Jackson introduced something few had imagined before, the six-string contrabass guitar. At a time when most bassists were content with four strings, Jackson dreamed of a wider voice, an instrument that could move between rhythm and melody. That invention would change everything. From studio sessions to world tours, musicians began to see the bass as more than background. It became an equal voice in the song. His versatility made him one of the most sought-after session musicians in history. From Chaka Khan to Steely Dan, from Paul Simon to Donald Fagen, his name quietly appeared on some of the most iconic albums ever made. Songs like For the Love of Money by the OJs and Aja by Steely Dan carried his signature, smooth, powerful, and precise. Every note he played seemed to breathe emotion. Those who worked with him described him as both perfectionist and poet. He didn't chase the spotlight, but when he played, the spotlight found him. His fellow musicians often said his timing was beyond rhythm, it was human. One longtime collaborator wrote online, "Anthony had this way of making silence feel like part of the groove." In interviews, Jackson often spoke about the responsibility of music. He believed a musician should serve the song, not themselves. He once said, "The bass isn't about showing off. It's about listening deeply and finding the pulse of life itself." That philosophy made him a quiet teacher to countless young artists who studied his recordings note by note. Through the 1980s and 1990s, Anthony toured the world, performing with greats across genres, jazz, pop, funk, and soul. He was known for his meticulous approach, spending hours adjusting tone and phrasing until every sound carried meaning. Those who saw him live remember not just his technical brilliance, but his calm. He stood on stage with the focus of a craftsman, lost in the rhythm he built. When health challenges began to affect his ability to perform in recent years, Anthony retreated from the public eye. But even then, his music continued to inspire. Younger musicians shared stories of learning bass through his recordings, calling him the architect of groove. After news of his passing broke, tributes poured in from across the music world. Grammy-winning bassist Marcus Miller wrote, "Anthony didn't just play bass, he gave it a soul. Every bassist today stands on his shoulders." Another message came from producer Quincy Jones, who called him a genius of restraint and precision, a true artist who elevated every track he touched. Fans around the world shared videos and memories, celebrating the man whose quiet genius made songs eternal. Friends say Anthony was a deep thinker, a man who loved science, philosophy, and art as much as he loved music. He often spoke about the connection between discipline and creativity. He believed that understanding structure was the key to true freedom. That mindset made his work not just musical, but spiritual. Despite his global influence, he remained humble to the very end. He lived a private life, focused on craft, not attention. Those who knew him personally describe a man of grace and kindness, thoughtful, gentle, and endlessly curious. He had a rare ability to make others feel seen, both through conversation and through sound. As the world remembers Anthony Jackson, the silence he leaves behind feels heavy, but also full. Because every musician who plucks a string, every listener who sways to a bass line, carries a part of him forward. His innovations gave voice to generations, and his lessons on humility and artistry will live far beyond his years. Anthony's music wasn't loud or flashy. It was pure, a deep, resonant voice that spoke directly to the soul. He showed the world that rhythm could be intelligent, emotional, and timeless, and though the man himself has gone quiet, His sound will never fade. It lives in the hum of a studio, the vibration of a string, and the quiet confidence of every artist who dares to play from the heart. Anthony Jackson leaves behind not just songs, but a philosophy that music, like life, is about listening. Listening to others, listening to silence, listening to what's true. His final legacy is not measured in fame, but in the deep and steady groove he left in the world. One that will keep playing, softly and endlessly, in the rhythm of time. It was a quiet morning when news spread that Rabbi Arthur Waskow, a lifelong voice for peace, faith, and justice, had passed away on October 20th, 2025, at the age of 92. For decades, he stood at the crossroads of tradition and change, a man who believed religion was not meant to divide, but to heal. His death marks the end of a generation that spoke truth with gentleness and led movements with compassion. Born in Baltimore, Maryland in 1933, Arthur Irwin Waskow, later known as Arthur Ocean Waskow, grew up in a world still finding its moral compass after war. His early years were shaped by curiosity, faith, and a deep belief in human dignity. Long before he became a rabbi, he was a writer, a thinker, and a passionate activist. He believed words could inspire action, and his life would prove that true. In the 1960s and 70s, Waskow became a central figure in both the civil rights and peace movements. He spoke out against the Vietnam War, stood alongside communities fighting for equality, and helped bring moral clarity to times of confusion. But it was his work within Judaism that would define his legacy. He helped lead what became known as the Jewish Renewal movement, a call to blend ancient wisdom with modern justice. He founded the Shalom Center, an organization dedicated to social activism rooted in spirituality. Through it, he connected faith with issues like climate change, poverty, and peace. To Arthur, religion was not confined to walls or rituals. It lived in the world, in the air, in how people treated one another. He often said, "The earth itself is a sacred text, and every act of kindness is a prayer." Friends and colleagues remember him not just as a scholar, but as a man of warmth. He carried a soft smile and a kind patience, even when facing disagreement. He believed deeply in dialogue, in listening as much as speaking. His presence had a calming power, the kind that made people feel seen and valued. When the news of his death became public, tributes poured in from across the faith community. One rabbi wrote, "Arthur didn't just teach Judaism, he lived it. He turned belief into action and reminded us that holiness begins with humanity." Another message read, "He helped a generation rediscover what it means to love the world." Throughout his long life, Arthur Waskow wrote more than 20 books, including God Wrestling and Down-to-Earth Judaism. His writings spoke to those searching for meaning in a changing world, people who wanted faith that embraced both justice and joy. He blended poetry, prayer, and activism into something uniquely his own. To many, he was not only a rabbi, but a bridge, connecting past and present, spirit and society. He often used the word renewal not as an idea, but as a way of living. Renewal meant starting again each day with purpose. Even in his later years, he continued to speak at gatherings, write essays, and mentor young activists. He believed that every generation carried the responsibility to make the world kinder than they found it. Those close to him say he never lost his humor. He would laugh easily, often making light of his age, calling himself an old tree still growing new leaves. Even in his final months, he spoke of gratitude for life, for love, for the endless beauty of creation. To his friends, his optimism was contagious. His passing leaves a space that few can fill. But his teachings live on in the communities he inspired. Synagogues across the country held small memorials, reading from his writings and singing the songs he loved. Many spoke of his ability to bring together people of all backgrounds, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and beyond, under one shared vision of peace. In an age of noise, Arthur Waskow was a quiet light. He reminded the world that faith is not about being right, but about being kind. He saw God in every person and believed that justice was the highest form of prayer. That belief guided him through 9 decades of service to others. As the sun sets on his long life, his voice still echoes in the words he once wrote, "Every generation must write its own Torah, not on parchment, but on the hearts of its people." Arthur Waskow's story is one of faith in action, a reminder that spirituality is not just about belief, but about how we live. His compassion touched countless lives, and his ideas continue to inspire those who seek meaning in the world around them. He may be gone, but his vision of love, renewal, and sacred responsibility will continue to guide generations to come. And as his friends and followers say goodbye, they carry forward his most lasting lesson, that peace begins with kindness, and kindness begins with us. It was a somber morning when the news began to spread. D'Angelo, the soulful voice who redefined R&B and reshaped modern soul music, had passed away after a long and private battle with cancer. The world fell into silence. His absence felt heavy, almost unreal. The man whose voice once carried warmth, pain, and truth had taken his final bow. Born Michael Eugene Archer in Richmond, Virginia in 1974, D'Angelo's journey was one of pure artistry. From an early age, he showed an almost spiritual connection to music. He grew up playing the piano in church, surrounded by gospel harmonies that shaped his understanding of rhythm and emotion. Those who knew him as a child remembered a boy who could lose himself in sound for hours, listening deeply, playing softly, dreaming big. By the time he reached his 20s, D'Angelo had become something rare, a musician who felt timeless. In 1995, he released Brown Sugar, an album that changed the sound of R&B forever. The smooth blend of soul, jazz, and hip-hop rhythms introduced the world to a new kind of groove, intimate yet powerful, confident yet humble. Songs like Lady and the title track Brown Sugar became instant classics. His voice, rich and textured, carried the kind of honesty that made listeners pause. He wasn't just singing, he was confessing, testifying, feeling. In a decade of flashy beats and radio trends, D'Angelo brought the soul back home. Critics called him a genius. Fans called him a savior of soul. But D'Angelo never chased fame. He chased meaning. In interviews, he often spoke softly about his love for music's spiritual side. "I don't just want to make songs," he once said. "I want to make something that heals." Then came Voodoo in 2000, a record that cemented his place among legends. It wasn't just an album, it was a movement. From the hypnotic rhythm of Untitled, How Does It Feel, to the depth of Send It On, Voodoo felt like a ritual of sound and emotion. Every track was a conversation between his voice, his heart, and his audience. That album earned him Grammy Awards, global recognition, and a devoted following. But behind the success, D'Angelo was struggling. The fame that came after Voodoo felt suffocating. The pressure to live up to the image, especially after the iconic video for Untitled, weighed heavily on him. He withdrew from the spotlight, stepping away from fame to find himself again. For more than a decade, he disappeared. Rumors filled the silence, stories of his battles with addiction, self-doubt, and inner pain. Yet those who truly knew him said he was always searching, always listening for that spark of inspiration. Music never left him. It simply went quiet for a while. In 2014, when Black Messiah was released without warning, the world was stunned. It was raw, powerful, and politically charged. The album spoke to an America in turmoil, blending protest and prayer in the same breath. D'Angelo had returned, not to reclaim fame, but to reclaim his purpose. The record earned critical acclaim and reminded everyone why he was called the heart of neo-soul. He didn't just sing about love anymore. He sang about struggle, faith, and the cost of being human. As the years went on, D'Angelo became more private. He performed occasionally, often in intimate venues where the lights were low and the music spoke louder than words. Those who attended said his presence was magnetic, humble, yet transcendent. When the news of his illness surfaced quietly among close circles, fans hoped he would pull through. But D'Angelo, ever private, chose to face his battle away from cameras and crowds. In his final months, he was surrounded by family, close friends, and the sounds that once shaped his soul, his piano, his records, and the quiet hum of creation. A family statement shared after his passing read simply, "He fought with grace and he left surrounded by love." Tributes poured in from across the music world. Questlove, his longtime friend and collaborator, wrote, "D'Angelo changed everything. He gave us honesty in a time when music was losing its soul. He was our brother, our healer, our reminder that truth never fades." Erykah Badu shared, "He was the sound of peace and pain, both living in the same song. His spirit was pure, and his music was prayer." On social media, fans from around the world posted clips of his performances, writing messages of gratitude. One user wrote, "His voice got me through heartbreak, healing, and hope. Rest easy, Dee. You gave us more than music. You gave us ourselves. As the days passed, radio stations began replaying Brown Sugar, Voodoo, and Black Messiah. Across generations, listeners found themselves rediscovering his words, his melodies, his silence. There was something almost eternal about it, the way his music could still make people feel seen. Even in his absence, D'Angelo continues to teach what soul really means. It's not about perfection, it's about truth. His art was never loud or showy. It was intimate, human, real. He gave voice to emotion itself. Many young artists today credit him as a guiding influence. From Frank Ocean to Anderson .Paak, his fingerprints can be felt in the rhythm, the groove, and the honesty of modern R&B. He opened the door for a new kind of expression, raw, spiritual, and fearless. Those who worked with him say he was never about chasing trends. He was about chasing feeling. He once said, "If it doesn't move me first, it can't move anyone else." That belief defined every note he ever played. In remembering D'Angelo, we remember more than a musician. We remember a poet of sound, a man who turned vulnerability into art. His journey was not easy, but his courage was beautiful. He lived quietly, loved deeply, and sang with a soul that refused to be contained. His story reminds us that real artistry comes from the heart, from living, from hurting, from healing. And though cancer took his body, his voice remains untouched, floating in every chord, every pause, every moment of truth. Somewhere tonight, a listener will press play on Brown Sugar or Untitled, and for a few minutes, time will stop. The world will fade, and only his voice will remain, warm, raw, timeless, and in that stillness, D'Angelo will live again. Not just as a name or a legend, but as a sound that never dies. A sound that once redefined soul and will continue to do so for generations to come. The news came quietly, yet it rippled deeply across Hollywood. Jackie Birch, the legendary casting director who helped define generations of film and television, passed away on October 12, 2025. She was 77. For decades, her name rarely appeared on screen, but her touch could be found in nearly every frame of the stories audiences loved. Behind every face that became iconic, there was often Jackie watching closely, believing deeply, and knowing instinctively when she had found the right one. Born in New York in 1948, Jackie's path to Hollywood was far from predictable. Before casting, she spent her early career teaching the deaf, a job that taught her patience, empathy, and the subtle art of reading people beyond words. Those skills would later become the foundation of her casting philosophy, the ability to see truth not in what was said, but in what was felt. Her entry into film came almost by chance. After moving to Los Angeles in the 1970s, Jackie began working in production offices and slowly found herself drawn to casting. She discovered that her greatest strength was seeing what others missed, the quiet potential in a nervous audition, the spark in an unknown actor's eyes. Within a few years, she became one of the most respected casting directors in the business. Her credits would go on to shape the culture of modern film. She was behind the casting of Die Hard, Predator, The Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, and Coming to America. Each of these films, now regarded as classics, carried Jackie's signature instinct: real people who felt authentic in unforgettable roles. Actors often said that auditioning for Jackie didn't feel like a test. It felt like a conversation. She had a warmth that put people at ease, even as she quietly studied every movement, every tone. One actor she discovered early in his career said, "Jackie saw something in me I didn't see in myself." She had this rare ability to look past the performance and find the person. Her office walls were filled with headshots, marked up with handwritten notes, observations, feelings, and ideas only she could decode. She didn't chase trends or star power. She believed casting was an emotional puzzle, one that required heart as much as skill. "Movies aren't made by lists of names," she once said. "They're made by chemistry. You have to feel it." In the 1980s and 1990s, Jackie became one of Hollywood's most sought-after casting directors. Directors trusted her completely. John McTiernan, who worked with her on Die Hard and Predator, once said, "Jackie could find the soul of a character before we'd even finished the script." She didn't just fill roles, she gave them life. Yet for all her influence, Jackie remained humble. She preferred the background, the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had helped an actor find their moment. She rarely gave interviews, often turning down credit for discoveries others later celebrated. Her joy came not from recognition, but from watching her choices light up the screen. Through her long career, she cast over 100 film and television projects. Her range was extraordinary, spanning from hard-edged thrillers to heartfelt comedies. She worked with some of the biggest names in Hollywood, yet she never lost her affection for newcomers. To her, every audition was a story waiting to be told. Those who knew Jackie personally remember her wit, her compassion, and her endless curiosity. She treated every actor, whether a seasoned star or a first-timer, with the same respect. "Jackie believed in people," said one longtime colleague. "She had this way of making you feel like you belonged, even if you didn't get the part." When the news of her passing was announced, tributes began to pour in from across the industry. Many spoke not only about her achievements, but about the humanity she brought to her work. On social media, actress Jamie Lee Curtis wrote, "Jackie Birch didn't just cast actors. She built families on film. Her heart was always in the room." Another tribute came from Kevin Bacon, who had worked with her early in his career. "She changed my life," he wrote. "She saw me when I was just another name on a list. Jackie gave me a chance, and that chance became everything. Her influence reached beyond Hollywood's glitz. She mentored countless young casting professionals, teaching them that intuition was just as valuable as experience. Learn to listen," she often told them. "The best performances begin before the camera ever rolls." In her later years, Jackie continued to work quietly, occasionally taking on projects that inspired her. She found joy in smaller, character-driven stories, the kind that reminded her why she fell in love with casting in the first place. Those close to her say she never lost her sense of wonder, even after decades in the industry. When she wasn't working, Jackie enjoyed spending time near the ocean, finding peace in the rhythm of the waves. Friends say that even in her final months, she remained sharp, funny, and deeply caring. She spoke often about gratitude for the people she met, the films she helped build, and the stories she was lucky enough to help tell. Her death, though quiet and dignified, left a space that can never quite be filled. Casting directors rarely receive public applause, but those within the film world know that Jackie's influence was monumental. The faces, voices, and performances she helped bring to light will continue to inspire audiences for generations. Her colleagues have described her as the invisible artist, someone whose work shaped the very fabric of modern cinema, without ever needing to step into the frame. In a tribute shared by the Casting Society of America, the statement read, "Jackie Birch reminded us that casting is the first act of storytelling. Her instincts, compassion, and courage elevated film as an art form. Her legacy will live on in every performance she touched. Her story stands as a quiet testament to the power of those who work behind the scenes, the ones who build, shape, and nurture the stories the world remembers." Jackie's work reminds us that greatness doesn't always need a spotlight. It only needs a heart that believes in others. As we look back at the film she helped create, it's impossible not to feel her presence. In every smirk from John McClane, every tear from a young Molly Ringwald, every laugh that echoes through Coming to America, her choices still breathe life. Jackie Birch was never the face on the poster. She was the reason the faces on those posters mattered. Today, as the industry mourns her loss, it also celebrates her art, the art of seeing people not for who they are, but for who they could become. And as the screen fades softly to black, her legacy remains woven into every story she helped tell, and in every dreamer who still believes that one audition, one moment, can change everything. Jackie Birch leaves behind a trail of performances that shaped cinematic history, and a reminder that true vision often works quietly, behind the camera, guiding others toward the light.